I speak online audience listen. So I meant to start these two songs 10 minutes before our meeting started, but there's a technical problem, 10 minutes late. And so I'll just zoom through this. This green box is moving. This is the pastor, guy named Ruggiero, me and good piano player, Robots. They are incredibly dedicated musicians. In a couple of minutes ago, I'll figure out how to get this distraction out of the screen. At least you can help me with it. He is a wonderful man in himself. I've known him out for years. He is a very talented musician. And he's very well accepted throughout the church and the town. Church, in my view, a model of integration. Church. Cuba has a 300-year history of slavery that we don't have. They had rebellions, and thousands of white people were killed, white property owners were killed years ago. This is a short video of the reverse. They both play and sing in the reverse role. This organ purchased by their other partner church. This church has two U.S. partners. One is ours, one is in Baltimore. That church in the last year sent us an electronic keyboard. And we have done other things in the church. The keyboard we had a huge difference in the church. They've been using a piano that was made in the 1950s in the U.S. and imported. It was literally crumbling apart from the run around with 2 mice and insects. And since we're late, I think I'm going to skip to the end of this. At the end of this talk, I had several musical performances by the kids, by the elders, by the choir, and by these two, and also by a little singer that I've seen before. Teenagers. They are all very musically talented. You know, it's part of their fundamental church activity. Let's start with a map of Cuba, 90 miles from Florida, which is just off the screen at the top here. Havana is over here. And Matanzas is here. This is a place we usually visit. That's where the big Protestant seminary is. And is a wonderful history itself. And here is Sagua La Grande. Oops. This is Sagua La Grande, where we drive to. This is a 6-hour drive from Havana to Sagua La Grande. This year, for the first time, we flew into Santa Clara. We drove from Santa Clara to here, which is about an hour and a half, because it's an old, slow road. The pastor of the church just moved in the last month, take a position at the church at the time. It's not on this map, it's down around here. And, so that's the geography of there's churches all over. 100 years ago, when the U.S. was had a huge presence throughout Cuba, 3 mainline Protestant organizations of multiple Protestant denominations divided Cuba up into 3 areas. And the collection of denominations that probably the central one is the one that our church is in. There's some that's here. As a result, they have 3 Presbyterians. Their General Assembly is in Havana. In the Havana office, they have a church, and conference rooms, and a library, and offices that manage the church nationwide. They are all suffering financially at all levels, even worse than we've seen before. Moving on, I'm going to give you a quick scan of a few churches. This is the Presbyterian Church downtown in Havana. It looks like it was built in Cleveland 90 years ago, and it kind of looks like that inside too. It's got it's called the First Presbyterian Church Reformed in Cleveland, and it has nice office spaces, a wonderful library with a huge collection of documents that I don't think even researchers in the U.S. have really seen, because none of them are online. It's just an old collection of dusty books. I've actually got one with me today. A copy. And this is the street immediately outside the front door in Havana. Densely crowded with pedestrians, huge numbers of bicycles and bicycle pedal-driven carriers. They have a huge fuel shortage. You can't drive from Kansas to Havana anymore because there's a chance you'll get to a gas station and they won't have fuel and you have to wait in line for hours. So transportation has become very difficult since the big fire in the Matanzas refinery a few years ago. The Russians are now promising to send oil. And we all read that the Russians sent a nuclear submarine into the Havana harbor today or yesterday. Well, the rest of the story. I thought I was going to show some Protestant Presbyterian churches. This is actually the Catholic Church in Sagua La Grande. Huge monolithic building, traditional European Catholic Church, Southern European. It is about 300 years old, older than any churches that we have. This is a small Protestant church about 20 miles away, where the pastor's husband, Gar Hill, preaches. So he commutes to his job. He lives in Sagua. They live in Sagua. He has to commute on his motor scooter 20, 25 miles away. And it's a much different looking church, as you might imagine, as you will not imagine. It's one of the several Presbyterian churches in the area. This is the church at Kai Barrien, over on the coast of Cuba. This is the headquarters of the Presbyterian, the Central Presbyterian of Cuba. And it also has, it's a bigger building, more sophisticated, and it looks like a church. This is a small church between Havana and Sagua. And this is part of the Presbyterian church down in Rio Rancho. I can't think of the name right now, but they go to this church as frequently as we go to our church. And I've been to this church also. Very delightful little residential church, and they get a lot of support from their town. Get a lot of good leadership. And this is the most beautiful church in all of Cuba. This is at the Protestant seminary in Matanzas. It is, which is on about a 30-acre plot on the top of the mountain overlooking the entire city of Matanzas, which is the second most important city in Cuba. And it gets travelers from all over the world, Christian travelers from all over the world. Switzerland provides a lot of support to the denomination. This is the inside of that church. I think it's the most gorgeous inside of a Presbyterian church or a Protestant church, that I've seen in Cuba. Just unmatched anywhere. And this is Sagua La Grande's church. Looks like the city jail, doesn't it? Well, the problem is this was a converted colonial home of a high-level general from Spain up until about 1898, when Spain lost due to the Revolutionary War with the support of U.S. troops. And this is the sign on the door. You'll look right here, you'll see a little sign next to the front door. And notice first that there's no steeple here. There's not even a cross showing. And this is the church, this is our partner church in Cuba. It's the city, they have a historical district. They have a historical committee, just like Santa Fe. You can't do anything in this part of the city without their permission. And they would not permit a bunch of American churches building a church in Sagua La Grande that looked like an American church. And they say, and furthermore, this is a historical district. It needs to look the way it looked like 120 years ago. So it looks like the jail, and it was the home of a high-level officer who left for Spain along with all the rest of them when they lost the war. It was the last war of independence in all of Latin and South America. It was the last Spanish territory to be launched to independence. And they literally represented it for decades. This is the sign I just pointed out to you. Notice that it has the word Santa Fe, 1914 to 2006. 2006 is the year we funded and helped with the construction of the building, reconstruction of the building. And I've never figured out exactly why Santa Fe is named, and there's no explanation, in other words. And I've never talked to anybody who knows exactly why. They say that's just a sign that came with the building. It exists there today. This is the inside, much nicer than the outside. And I've noticed around the world, in many worlds where the governments are not so organized and not so progressive, people don't want to show their wealth. So they live in a home that may look shabby, but inside they've got their wealth invested in furnishings and life. This is the inside of the inside plaza. And they have a colonial central plaza, which is close to the sky. And this is where they eat and they do lots of things. Very typical Hispanic colonial architecture. This is another view of the patio inside. And this is when we were doing some hurricane reconstruction. You can see damage up here on the roof. You can see a pile of sand and bricks and construction materials here. We funded, it was Hurricane Irma about 6 years ago now that damaged this building extensively. This is some kids and pastor playing around, preparation for a meal we were there in February. This is what the inside of the sanctuary looks. This is from last year when Harry came with us, and Bill Humphreys, and this is the pastor from the Baltimore Presbyterian Church at Hunting Ridge. We had two churches and several pastors associated with those two churches here all together. This is some kids, and unfortunately, here's Carolyn Rard was with us today, and Julie Crawford, and Faith Yeoman. I'm not even sure who's sitting here. This is our translator. We have a fellow who was a translator for us. A nice fellow who was worked for the medical university in this town, and he was the English teacher there. Here's the pastor with some of her local kids. They had an event one day for us and others. Every time we go there, we try to send food in advance. There's a food service that caters to the wealthy in Cuba. And there is a 1%, let me tell you. Every high-level person in the government is very wealthy. They generally live in the same neighborhood west of Havana, where there's a yacht club and a small airport, private airport. And that's where wealthy people live. But this company will send food, right, even frozen food, right to Sagua La Grande, even though they have 12-hour power outages every day now in Cuba, except for Havana, especially except for the Ricos.
Except for what?
What?
Did you say they have 12-hour outages except for the rich
people in West?
Yeah.
Part of this is related to the economy. Venezuela used to be their main source of oil for the last few decades, and the Chinese have been drilling for oil all throughout Cuba, haven't found it. Chinese tried hard; they looked for it. We saw their drilling rigs. But when Venezuela tanked, and they have really tanked in a negative, very bad way. Cuba was without oil because we are not allowed to export oil. Cuba, we put pressure on countries that do, and so they ever had a very bad fuel situation. And then that big refinery at Matanzas was hit by lightning, and many of the facilities were damaged. But anyway, they still to this day have significant power outages in Sagua. Here's Judy Crawford looking over study class. Day we were there. Kids of all ages, a small group that afternoon. Here they are, and he's leading them in some kind of prayer. The lady on the left is she's either Uriah or Ileana.
Juliana.
Ileana is she's an officer in the church. Might be I think she's the treasurer. She's on their session. Call it the consistorio. She is famous for her husband. These are among us. Her husband, many years ago, one member of this church who passed away during the COVID epidemic, traveled to America for the first time. He's coming to visit our church. She traveled with a pastor who was her brother. The two of them traveled to the Miami airport, and he said, "You got to go to the restroom." He disappeared, and she never saw him again. He escaped and ran out of the airport, and he's still in Florida. I've communicated with him. He's helped out his former church and his sister by sending some things through me. It's an amazing story. His name is Travieso, very nice pastor. And anyway, all she could do was call this church, speak in Spanish, saying, "I'm in the Miami airport. I've never known how to board an airplane. I don't have any guidance. I can't read English, speak English." And so someone from this church walked her through the process.
She had never been out of Sagua La Grande, I don't think,
Is that right?
and never on an airplane.
And she was put up by Alice here, right?
Yeah, we had fun. I took her to Los Alamos and she'd never been over 300 feet high on Earth.
The windy, I'm guessing the windy road got to her, huh?
Yeah.
All the slips. They
Scary.
don't have those.
Yeah, and then she introduced me. And when I got to Cuba, she introduced me to her friends. She said, "This is Alice, who drives a car like you would fly an airplane."
Anyway, so her husband, she keeps in touch with her husband, and on occasion she's asked her husband to contact us. He'll send some medical supplies or some liturgical supplies. He sends some communion cups, for example, communion secretary, because you can't mail anything to Cuba. You can't even mail a letter to Cuba anymore, much less a package.
Mhm.
It's impossible in the U.S. But they have WhatsApp. You know, all the people, the pastor, and a number of people in the congregation communicate via WhatsApp, and they have their own chat groups. There's a high-level General Assembly chat group, and then there's a local Presbyterian has a chat group, and this church has a chat group, and it's a gas to read. It's just colorful poems and songs and videos and pictures of their congregation and new babies and things like that. And it's the same kind of chat that goes on in our church. These are two boys in blue shirts are her two sons. These kids, this is an older picture. They're now growing teens. This is quite an old picture. They are now basically large teenagers. But this is another instance of where I saw kids playing with no concern about race, no division, segregation, or separation by race. My view is that it's in part because they're just too poor to engage in discrimination in housing or healthcare or anything else. They're just too poor to engage in any kind of separation or discrimination. They are really buddies and get along well. This is some men in the congregation. Do you recognize those t-shirts? Those are our t-shirts on sale right here in this lobby.
Same boys.
Yeah, it's the same twins. They're
Yeah.
twins.
Yeah, this is two of the boys. Two boys are now in high school. This is the husband. This is the husband of the pastor. He is, like I said, pastor of a church 20 miles away at Calabazar. It's better on the outside, and it's actually a nicer church in all respects. They have a separate. Pardon?
Was it in Carlo? Boys,
Carlos, for sure. I think you're right. I think you're right.
so
Kind of forget. And Hobos, of course, who's a musician. And, he put we brought T-shirts and he put them on.
That's a good idea.
Just for me. This is, we had a meal. I'll show you some other pictures related to this. But the server here, the lady, is coming out of a new kitchen that we built for them in the last year. This was one of their special requests 2 years ago. And we funded just $7,000 or $8,000 to rebuild their kitchen. And they got a new kitchen, and the purpose of this new kitchen, see if it comes up next. Notice the chairs here. These are made in Cuba. Metal chairs made in Cuba out of hot metal. Anybody know what hot metal is? Hot metal is not a term I hear much, but if you take all your recycled metal, aluminum, steel, copper, all that junk goes into a metal recycle bin. You melt it all down, you get hot metal. It changes from neighborhood to neighborhood, from dump to dump, wherever the source is. In some places in the world, hot metal is mostly steel. In other places, it's mostly aluminum. But it turns out it's a product that can be used very effectively and cheaply for a certain product, for making certain items. And these chairs and patios are one example. Move on to more important stuff. This is the new small eating room. And they built this room just to serve the homeless in their town. It was for serving people who can come in through these doors. And there's a door behind the photographer here. It opens into the area I just showed. And so this is just a small, they now have 4 tables in here, not 2. It's only built big enough for 2 to 4 tables. And the homeless are allowed to come in here, I forget, 2 days a week or something. And they feed them from this little serving window. The little serving window provides a little sense of security because oftentimes there's a single woman or 2 women working in the kitchen in the church. And the original church kitchen used to be at the other end of the building. And so the homeless men mostly were wandering around and resting and sleeping and eating. And they were uncomfortable with that because there was no other supervision on the weekday. So we built this little room with a serving window. It came out very nice. There's a pastor serving somebody. This is what you would see if you were picking up a free breakfast and you were homeless. Under the serving window. And this is the kitchen under construction. A year ago now. Pastor on the right, supervising. The pastor's husband, that is. And this is Sharon, my wife, in front of the new kitchen. It's really quite nice. It's got electric hot plates. It's got propane burners. It's got refrigeration. It's got a freezer. It's really a much nicer kitchen than they ever had before. This is another view of the kitchen. Move things around since then. They've got a freezer. We can ship frozen food to them. This outfit is based in Spain. And it actually serves mostly the very wealthy in Cuba, and also the big resorts offshore and onshore, big resort hotels. Those are hotels that American citizens like us are not even allowed to stay in by U.S. law. It's a crime for us to stay in these, government-built hotels. It's usually a partnership between some developer and the Cuban government. The Cuban government always keeps 51%. And there's a very nice hotel now in Sagua La Grande, almost empty as near as I can tell. And there's some big resorts offshore on the islands. These are the ones maybe you've heard about. But you can fly in your private jet to an airport on an island off Cuba and go to a resort that has golf courses and lounges and conference facilities, just like in America. And all the people who work there come from the mainland, either by a bridge that connects the islands or by boat. Mainly our vehicle bridges. But anyway, the point is, this company provides food to all those facilities. These rich people and these Europeans who come to these resorts, they want to eat like they eat in Europe. There's one company in Cuba that I know about, and they deliver frozen food and other goods to these organizations. And we're on their route to go to one big resort, so they'll drop food off for us at the church. And so the last few years, every few months, we've sent them food, a little frozen food. They put it in their freezer, and then they pray to God that it won't thaw out because they have power outages for 12 hours a day. And so it's a struggle. Here we are just singing in the church one day. There's faith. And Guylaine is singing, and Hobas is playing the electronic keyboard. I got to tell you that Guylaine is just in the last month gone to another church. It's going to be a big loss for the congregation, and I just hope they can find someone anywhere near talented as she is as a preacher. But she and her husband both went to a church where, at least the plan was, he could be associate pastor and she'd be the pastor. The Chaguasco Church. It's up over the hill, up over the ridge, east-south mountain ridge on the south side of Cuba. Probably a 2-hour drive away. It's in the Central Presbyterian. But she's left the church, and a fellow from the Presbyterian, officer comes to the Sagua Church to preach. And I think he only comes one day a week. This church is left to struggle with its own volunteers the rest of the time. So next time we go, we'll have to find out what is resulting. Our sister church was there just last month in Baltimore. I called her just a couple of days ago. I got caught up with her. She says that it's kind of hurting the church a little bit. In fact, a lot. She's gone. She did leave the organ behind because Yobas plays it, and he's an excellent player. And it was a donation to the church. It was not personal to her. And she's looking for a new organ. I'm actually going to call those 4 churches and convince them that they need to provide an organ to that church. The Guasco Church doesn't have an organ. It's a little play toy organ, and it has her guitar. She also plays and sings the guitar very, 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 very well. This is a typical street scene in Sagua La Grande. This is a tourist street. We did not actually go on this trip. We went to it on the last trip. You can buy stuff in American dollars, pay in American dollars, you can get change in American dollars or Cuban pesos. And they carry high quality stuff. You can get stuff that the ordinary residents of Sagua can't buy in the stores they patronize. Stores they patronize are about as big as a large bedroom in this country. And it'll have a couple of shelves. 3 shelves will be food. And there might be 2 bottles of vegetable oil. On another shelf, there might be 3 bags of rice. On another shelf, there might be some frozen chicken. The food shortage has been severe all the years I've been involved with this. And they're so desperate to get food. So when they get a visit of European quality food, frozen with all the other kinds of food, it's a really they invite the whole neighborhood and feast for a weekend as near as I can go. This is housing. This is a little lower than average in Sagua La Grande, but not much. I just couldn't resist getting a photo of this as we walked back one day from walking the city. Notice the ladder up to the penthouse suite, which has a view chair to enjoy the view. I don't know what these 2 buildings really contain, but the windows are boarded up. This is pretty typical of Sagua La Grande. Sagua La Grande was at one time the 3rd largest city in all of North and South America. Back when all of Latin America, all of South America and Central America was owned and dominated by Spain and to some extent Portugal. And at that time, this was the 3rd biggest city in the hemisphere. I think maybe it came after Buenos Aires and something. I think that Havana was the biggest city. Sagua La Grande was not. Correct myself. But Sagua La Grande also has buildings, old colonial buildings, and then more recent buildings since the U.S. left. the communist revolution was over, things had declined. And during that period. This is a lady we visited late last year on our last visit. Many of you have seen this picture before. This lady personally knows members of this church. She was involved in the reconstruction of the colonial home into a church. And she was kind of like the Judy Haynes of Sagua La Grande Church for several years when Bill Armbruster and others in this church were flying down there, bringing money and, helping with the plans. She was an active middle-aged woman there, and she kind of ran the church. And now she lives in, this is her home. Scrap sheet metal on the ground, front courtyard made out of rusted sheet steel. Inside was a little nicer. We went and visited her with Harry Everts last year, and she is saying goodbye to us on our visit. We kept on walking. I was real pleased to be introduced to this lady. Any questions so far?
Yes, what's the population of Sagua La Grande?
I've seen 30,000, I've seen 50,000. It used to be bigger. It was a major port city back when, before the Cuban Revolution. It was, and you see the pictures I've shown in the past years, all the old colonial buildings, where all the wooden windows, window framed doors rotted and dropped out, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And now some of them have been replaced with people, makeshift doors and windows. Some don't have any windows at all. When hurricanes come through, they just blow through the building and people shelter in place behind the wall. But actually inside it wasn't terrible conditions actually. This is what it looked like from the street, and the whole street is like this. Nothing's nicer than this, basically. But she said to say hi to Armbruster. Didn't know that he passed. And, everybody here, the people involved early on here all knew her. So here I'm going to launch into some music. We got kind of a late start, and I can play this music. I got several musicians here, and I'm going to come back to this one in just a second. But here's the video we took 6 years ago, something like that. Here's what she looked like a few years ago when Barb Hutchinson traveled with us. Barb is now, declining. I haven't seen her in church recently. She's on oxygen all the time. She's getting older. And here the girl is, Sophie is her name, a little older. Here she is today. Not this, anywhere. But let me show you what she could sing back then. I'll only play part of this. Most of you have seen it. This song is a patriotic song. We always honor their nation. Can't see the turn the volume. Sorry. That's her. It's probably tail end something she was saying. Every teenager, she has her cell phone, in her hand at all times. This is your bus. Whoops, I'm gonna go back to that a little bit. It's so good. I'm gonna move on to the pages. Every Wednesday, the church has elder morning. They feed the elders in the neighborhood, breakfast. They have a talk group, a bit of a service, and they sing some songs. And some of these ladies have passed away since the pandemic. Others of them are still alive. The school bus in the rear, and this is Caridad. Is that Caridad? Listen,
She's still alive.
yeah, that's right.
Her sister maybe.
Yeah, I think this is her sister Lazarus. And this lady's passed away.
Yeah. COVID really hit them hard.
Yeah, COVID. I've got a song that these two people play. And then taken at the depths of the pandemic, and you can see it in their faces and in the music they sing. Maybe we'll get to it. It's a real keeper. She is now recorded in a studio down in Havana in the last couple of months. Somebody discovered her. I don't know if it was somebody from one of the other U.S. churches or what. They got her transportation to Havana, and she spent a couple of days a day recording music. He sent some to her guy. In case you want to hear something. This is another one of Cuba singing. Trucks outside on the street. This is the congregation on a Sunday. Video is pretty cool. I think it's getting the size and the larger congregation in every week. Okay, so this is not like us. You'll see. Hey, lady on the right, she's right, absolutely. No, she's away, she's just fine. I'm still gonna carry out. Andre still dances too. Sure. And I see somebody from here dancing. Dave, Jerry, and Marilyn here. Dirk, there's the author. I managed to dodge it because I was the video. Videographer.
Yeah, they had a big party for us on the last night that we were there.
I've got a video of Lazarus dancing with Harry. I've never shown it. Unless I get Harry's permission. Can you imagine Harry dancing? Somebody from the crowd. It was great. Couldn't believe it. They had a great time. Right up, right. So the sister. He's happy. He's an active grouper. Gonna move on to the next. So Saturday activity, they have Saturday morning activities for the kids. In this church, they don't have the capacity to keep records and use the formalities that we do. Anybody who shows up is considered a member of the church. Good point. So they get all the different kids. They don't take anybody who walks in the door for courtesies and activities. Just a Saturday morning. There's little Sophie on the right. Like the old piano in the background is then retired because can't even hear the paragraph. Ron? The official end. I got one more. You can leave it if you want to, or you can watch the last one. Did I show this in the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, never mind. I'm done. Are there any questions?
Well, I'm noticing a lot that's changed in the 20 years since I was there. When I was there, that they took pride in saying there were no homeless because everybody had a government house. There may be 4 generations of people in those houses, but everybody had a place to live. And then you're talking about feeding the homeless, which I find interesting. One thing that I found interesting then was you can't just decide you want a new house and go out and get it. You, if you want to downsize and there's a growing family that needs to have more room, you can work a deal out. But you can't move from one town to another. So in those areas where they have the high-end hotels, you're lucky if you were born and lived there because you get a lot more money. But you can't live in another town and say, hey, I want to move there and make more money. You are where you are. And another thing was, when I was there, I was really impressed with their emergency system in that in case of a hurricane or any kind of a disaster, there were pre-planned buses that would pick up a busload of people, and there was one doctor for every busload. And they would head to the mountains. And it was all prearranged. There were sustenance in facilities in the mountains. And then Cuba had to start buying oil from Venezuela and didn't have money, so they swapped doctors. Said a lot of their doctors, and there were well-educated doctors in Cuba, sent to Venezuela. So I don't know if they've still got one doctor per bus. I doubt it.
They still do have some very good physicians, because we had a translator who was an English teacher at the medical school. And I got the impression they have good physicians, but they cannot get the supplies they need, the medicine.
Because of us.
Yeah, our embargo, of course.
Yeah. And they can't even get them from Europe because they're embargoes against anything that has any connection with an American pharmaceutical.
So China has stepped up. China is in Cuba big time. I told you they've been drilling for oil. They sell all the cell phones in Cuba come from China. And China doesn't care what our rules say. So it's not like Europe. So China provides a lot of furniture and refrigerators, telephones, TVs. It's all Chinese.
Do you think the government is stable there?
Pardon?
Do you think the government is stable there in Cuba?
I'm afraid it is. People don't have the wherewithal to revolt. And it's true that the protests are only tolerated up to an extent. The people have been arrested. There's some protests last year against the government, but people went to jail for standing in the street with a sign. Just like the family we're helping in Venezuela. These were school teachers, Venezuelans, school teachers standing in the street with a sign demanding higher wages because they're all starving. And some of those are still in prison 3 years later. But Cuba's a little like that. They'll tolerate a protest up to a point, but then suddenly the leaders are arrested.
What percent of the population is in the Communist Party?
Well, I'd say it's a couple percent.
What is it?
A couple percent.
Just a few percent?
Very small, very small. It's basically they have their own legislature like we do, that passes laws. But the people in that legislature are members of the Communist Party, not any other party. So it's kind of a hoax. And the power comes from the top down. The legislator who steps out of line can be dealt with privately by the president.
And it's never been like Russian communism. I mean, it's Cuban. government, whatever you want to call it. They took care of the people better than they had ever, the people as a whole, much better than the East ever thought.
Yeah, the truth is, you go to these towns like Sagua La Grande, and there are no federal high-level government officials there at the dark. In the evening, in the weekends on these towns, it's life is the same as it's been for 400 years.
And people are happy and proud to be Cuban.
Yeah.
I was so innocent and naive when I went. I thought, oh, they're all wanting to come to the US. You know, I had these pictures. They love their country.
I'll keep talking, but you can start to leave if you need to. I'd like to say that, first of all, I'm sorry about the technical difficulties. You know, we have a new system. You know, I wasn't prepared for it. I didn't talk to Alicia early enough. Also, we're going to be looking for people soon to go on the next trip. Will probably be January. This year we will plan a trip a little earlier in the year, and the weather will be nicer. And we're looking for people who want to go to Cuba. You know, it's a little primitive. It's not like going into a vacation resort. We share bedrooms and dormitories. This year we stayed in the pastor's former residence. They had moved into a better residence. Which provided them, and their apartment was vacant, so we slept in there. Frankly, I would have been better off sleeping in their church, even during a room with my colleagues, male colleagues here. Being in the church overnight, sitting in that interior patio on a nice summer night is really nice. It's totally quiet. There's rooms all around that patio, so you can't hear the trucks inside the courtyard.
Are the families still there?
There's one corner of that building that has a family in it, in the church. The plan was for the church to acquire that property, and we got to have a full square. It's basically a quarter of a city block. And but it turns out they couldn't evict those people, and they couldn't even buy them out. And the government gets involved. The local government council gets involved in decisions like that, and they won't enforce. They won't do it just because the church wants to. The family there has to cooperate, and it's not cooperating. So, spread the word, tell your friends and themselves. Think about it going next time, and you will have better sleeping arrangements.
Thank you.
Thank you all.